All right, so now we are on to distribution of secret keys and private keys. Key management and distribution. So we saw that we need the keys for signatures, for hashing, cryptographic hashing and things like that. So how do you distribute, and for encryption for sure. So the question is, how do you distribute these keys? And that includes both public, private keys, and so there is a whole infrastructure that has been set up for public key distribution, public key infrastructure, and these certificates that you get, and how do you get the certificate, how the certificates are revocated. What are all these certificates? So this you will learn today, what is in the certificate, okay? How to find the certificate. So key distribution. If suppose there are n people, we want to talk, we are right now in this room, we are about 12 today, I think, 12 or 13 people. So if we want to talk privately, then we will need n times n minus 1 by 2 keys. One key for each pair, right? So I will have to have, if there are 12 people, I will need 11 keys myself, and everybody else will need 11, well, so you will need some keys, right? Maybe different number, but anyway, the total number of keys n minus 1, n times n minus 1 by 2 pairs, and that many keys will need. Each pair will have a unique key. So there are issues as to how do you trust the public key. So suppose you say, well, here's my public key, right? So how do I know that this is you, that you didn't take somebody else's public key and then you're saying this is my public key? Right? And so one of the things that is common, and I have studied probably already many times, is that the master secret keys are really not used that much. So whatever we do, excuse me, okay. So whatever we do, we don't use them. We just use secret keys to generate some secret keys, and then use them for a little while, and then we generate new secret keys, and then we use them for a while. So we use the secret keys to very, very rarely, so that the attacker cannot get too many samples. Okay. So there are two keys, master keys and the session keys. So we saw per message key, right? Similarly, there is a session key. Session key is that for the next 10 minutes, they will use this key. That is your session key. Master key remains the same. So master key is maybe for a very long time, maybe it remains good for 3 months, but the session keys are for a few minutes. This is how you do it. A says to B that I am A, my number is N1, nonce is N1, means this I am going to use number N1 this time. This is a number that we will use only this time, right? N1. So what in the next few chapters, everything that I'm going to present, actually, I'm going to present in English and present in symbolic method. I think the book only gives you symbolic. Okay? So the message will be sent IDA concatenated with N1. Okay? What that means is my ID is A and my number is N1. Right? Goes to B. B sends a message, says this message. B sends this message. Now you can read this message. What it says is that B takes KS, IDA, IDB, FN1, N2, all of this concatenated together, encrypts it. E means encryption with the key KM. Okay, so whenever you see the letter E, that means encryption. First parameter is the key and the rest, second parameter is the message. So this whole thing is encrypted with KM and sent here. So what that means in English is that let us use the session key KS. This KS is session key, and my nonce is N2. That I have selected the random number N2. Okay, you'll see in a minute why they have to select the random number N1 and N2. And in this message, there is FN1. So whatever N1 was sent, some function of that is sent here back. So All right. So now you see that this one goes in clear. This one goes encrypted. And then A will say, I am able to decrypt using the master key. The master key was secret, right? They both had before. Right? So I'm able to, and so let me claim, I'm claiming that I know the master key because I'm sending you back your number. So it sends back KS, the session key, not the session key, the FN2 encrypted with the session key. Okay? So this proves that A knows KM. Right? Because it was able to decrypt this whole thing, find N2, find KS, and send it back. Right? Nobody else can send this answer back. If you don't know KM, you cannot send this back. Now, second thing is, you cannot replay these things because if you take the same thing and send it next time, the number will be different. I mean, the thing is, if you know KM, then you are all set. You can, whatever number comes, you can find out. But the thing is, if you just know, so the thing is, this is why we have the answers, because this is just for this little while. This is valid. Okay? So these answers will be valid only for a little while. Similarly here, this answer is valid only for a little while. Whenever you send N1, we need to send back FN1. And so next time you will send some other number and the answer will be different. Okay? So KDC. Many schemes that we will talk about use what we call KDC, Key Distribution Center, which is a server which keeps everybody's key. Okay? So everybody goes to K. So that makes it easier. Why? Because suppose we have 12 people here. So we need 12 times 11 times divided by 2, about 66 keys. If we just had one master here, let's say key distribution center, then all we need is 11 keys because one person with 11 or 12, right? So we only need 12 master keys, right? And so everybody has a secret with the KDC. So you go to KDC. So A goes to KDC, says, hi, I am A. I want to talk to B. My nonce is N1. So it will send ID A, ID B, and N1. This is it clear. Now, gets back the answer. What is the answer? The answer has many levels of encryption. So let's read carefully. It has something encrypted with the key. What key? What is the first key? KA. KA is the secret that A and KDC share. Okay, nobody else in the world knows that secret other than A and KDC. Right? KS. KS is a session key that has been created for this session. So this is something that the KDC just has created. IDA, it says this is your ID. IDB, this is the ID you want to talk to. This is your number. Okay? Followed by something which is cryptic again. It is encrypted with KB. KB is what? Can you guess now that we know KA? What is KB? Think about it a little bit. Yeah, B is secret with the KDC. So KB is something that only B and KDC know. A doesn't know that. But what this does is this says KS and IDA, those things are encrypted with KB and then put it here and then send it to A. All right. A will decrypt this. A can decrypt this. How can it decrypt it? Because it knows KA. This much it can decrypt. Basically, it will find KS. It will find IDA, IDB, and 1. It will find this string, but it will not be able to decrypt it. I mean, this will come out. So this is what it will send to B. Okay? And this is called a ticket. Okay? This will send to B that, look, I want to talk to you and this is what I got from the KDC. So it cannot interpret what is inside here because it doesn't know KB, but it can send the whole thing back to B. B can decrypt it. Right? And B can decrypt it and find out what? What will B find out from this? Two things. Yeah, it will find out what is the session key to be used and who I am talking to. Alright? Because it came encrypted, this number has not been modified, so I can be sure that I am talking to whoever I was supposed to talk to. Okay? So it says, okay, it sends back E, K, S, and 2. What that means is it takes another nonce, encrypts it with the session key, and sends it back. Alright? Now A has the session key, so it can decrypt that and send it back saying that yes, I understand and here is your number. You understand why all these is necessary? Because nobody else can take these things and play with it. Okay, if you don't have KB, you cannot decrypt this. If you don't have KA, you cannot decrypt this. If you don't have KS, you cannot move further. So these things are, these nonces help to make sure that you can make the answer based upon these known keys. Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah. Oh, because that one is put back in the answer. So the thing is, when the answer comes back, it knows that this is the answer to that question.
Okay.
Your question?
Yes. So A and B have their public and private keys.
No, hold on. No. There is no public and private here. This is all secret key. No, let me just clarify this one. There is no public and private key here. These are all secret keys. So everybody has a secret with the KDC.
So they are not session based. They are also something like public and private, which are permanent.
Public and private are permanent. KA would be permanent here, right? KA and KB would be permanent.
So along with public and private, these parties also get KA and KB.
Yeah, but we are not going to use public and private here. I mean, I'm sorry. Just let's have our things straight. Public and private are used very rarely, and this is using the secret keys only. Yeah. KA and KB can be some kind of master key. This is like your Wushtel key. Yeah. So what will happen is, actually, this is not Wushtel key will be coming in later on. So I will introduce you that what that means, why and with. But basically, so there is one master password you have with Wushtel, and that gives you some secret that you can use for that session. Right? Is that clear? I mean, like basically so the secret that you are using right for the session is not the same as your master password.
In order to exchange for KS, you have to share KA or KB
with KDC. Yeah.
In essence, KA and KB is also master.
They are master keys. Yes, they are master keys. They are permanent. Hopefully they are changed maybe every 3 months or something. And KDC has to be under a lock and key. Right? Because it has all the secrets. So you cannot just leave it in public. It has to be so that nobody can really reach it by any means. Okay? So now this is public keys. Now using public keys, it's much easier. With public key, when you go to Amazon, you say, well, hi, I am this, and my public key is this. All right? Everything is in clear. And then Amazon says, well, here is the session key, which is basically session key is encrypted with your public key. Right? So the public keys make life much easier. Although this is subject to man-in-the-middle attack. Can you imagine how this can be done? So how somebody else can say, well, I am Amazon? Very easy, right? Somebody else can just send you saying that, okay, here is your session key, and then send the request to Amazon with another private key, with another public key. So then you update that by saying that, hi, I am A, my nonce is N1. So you encrypt that with the public key of B. So obviously there would have been before that, somehow A will know the public key of B, and encrypt it, N1 and IDA, send it there. This can decrypt that and says, here is my nonce N2, and this is encrypted with your public key. And then this can send it back N2, and now that we know each other, here's the session key. So now, this one cannot have that man-in-the-middle attack, because this message cannot be understood by C. C cannot decrypt it.
So in this transaction, A identifies with that ID key, but B never identifies it.
Yeah, right. So what happened here is that to find the public key for A, this is required. To find the public key for B, ID is required, but that is probably, we already know that we are talking to Amazon or something, right? So yes, I mean, you understand this, right? Is that the ID of B is already known because I want to talk to B, and so, but B doesn't know that who I am. So I'll tell that I am Raj Jain, and here's my certificate or key or whatever, right? I mean, so that is why this ID is there, so that now B can determine the public key. Okay, I didn't give the public key. I could have sent a public key of A. I could have said, here is the number and here's my public key. That IDA is translated into public key of A. And in fact, I mean, there is one message which will be in the front generally, is that that B will send the public key or something, so that, so this is all what is done when you do HTTPS. First you connect an HTTP, which is clear, in clear, and then you exchange few messages and you have a session key. Once you have a session key, then we put an S in HTTP. All right. All right. Now you can do hybrid stuff. You can use public keys, private keys, KDCs, no KDCs. There are many combinations possible. So you can use private keys and KDC. You can use secret master keys with each KDC, which shares the master key with each user and distributes the session key using master key. Public key can be used to distribute the master keys. So basically, when you want to talk to KDC and you want to set up a master key, you could do that using public keys once in a quarter. That's it, okay. And particularly the users are, too far out, then, you can't just give it to them. See, previously, when you needed a new password, you went to the office of the IT department and they gave you, you just got the password there. But now everything has to be done on the net. So everything has to be done in public. So you need those public keys. And so that is the thing we use, right? So let's talk about how do we get the public keys? So first, let's talk about how it is done, and then we come back to these 3 points. So you go to an authority. And by the way, I mean, at the end of this chapter, if we get to the end, you have to go to the authority and get your own certificate. But so you go to the authority, just like you have to go to the DMV to get your driver license. The DMV is the authority, right? So here there is a authority. You go to the authority and you say, well, I want to talk to B. The time now is T1. So basically, in the message sense, it will say request and time T1. It will say, here is the certified public key for B. All right. And this is encrypted with the private key of the authority. All right. Now, this can be decrypted. How? Because everybody knows the public key of the authority. So A can decrypt that and get the public key of B, and then it sends the usual, basically, it sends that, it encrypts this request with the public key of B and says, here's my nonce and here's my ID. And then it says, all right. It goes to authority. B goes to authority and says, what is its public key? This is why the IDA was required, remember? IDA was required because now it can go to the authority and get the public key for A. And since it comes, this PR auth is actually subscript. So basically this is encrypted with the, encrypted and comes back with the public key. And then the public key is used to send back the nonce, and the nonce is sent back again. Understand how we can use an authority to verify that we have the right, we are talking to the right person, because we get the public key not from this person, but we get the public key from the authority. Okay. So we can trust this PUA and PUB. If it came from B, then somebody else could make it up and say, I am B. Here's my public key. Here comes our, but there is a still problem with this. Problem with this is that we have to talk to authority every time we need to talk to everybody else. So, basically we have to go to the authority every single transaction. And maybe we don't want to do that. All right, now let's come back to these things. Since many of these messages are public, basically forgery we want to avoid. So basically this scheme does avoid the forgery. And since the authority is, if you didn't have all of this, then you could tamper with the messages and so on and so forth. So all of these problems are avoided in this scheme, except the problem is now that the authority has to be present all the time. So now the next scheme that we'll tell you, it has one where authority does not have to be present all the time. And that is a certificate scheme. Public key certificate. A public key certificate is like a driver's license, as I said. Is that once you get a driver's license, you can prove to everybody that you are, whatever you are. So I can say I'm Raj Jain. Okay, I can go to any airport and say I'm Raj Jain because I have this certificate. Right? Either a driver's license or a passport. Certificate allows key exchanges without real-time access to the public key authority. So we don't have to go to DMV for every transaction. We just have that certificate which can be reused and used and used again and again. Okay. A certificate binds the authority to the identity to the public key. All content signed by a trusted public key authority. So the thing is, whatever is in the certificates are all signed. Now we learn about digital signature already, right? So we know how to sign a document, how to verify that this signature is valid. And so that's what we'll do, certificate. We will have certificate which is signed by the authority and can be verified by anyone Who knows the public key authority is public key? You know, this is a double word here. Public key authority is public key. So as long as we know the public key of the authority, right? So this is how it will work. A goes to CA. CA is the certificate authority. Hey, I am A and my ID is A. Now, can I get a certificate, please? And of course, you have to pay some money. As soon as the money is sent there, then you get a certificate. All right? So it says, here is your certificate. Now, certificate is an encrypted thing, which is encrypted by the private key of the authority. It has a time when the certificate was issued, the ID of A, and the public key of A. Okay? This is called the certificate of A. So A keeps it in the drawer. All right? And similarly, B gets a certificate. B says, hi, I am B, and then B gets a certificate at time T2. And now A goes to talk to B. He says, look, I am A, and here is my certificate. And B goes to A, says, hey, I am B, and here is my certificate. All right? And they can both verify the certificates. How? Because they have the public key of the CA. So now once this was all developed, then basically the world said, well, we need some CAs who will do the CA job, and we need authorities and so on and so forth. So all that system has been set up, and that is called PKI. Public Key Infrastructure. Public Key Infrastructure, and so there are three words which are common and they are related: PKI, PKIX, and X509. X509 is the standard, ITU standard, ISO standard, ITU standard, which defines what certificates should look like. ISO standard for certificate formats. X.509 is the ISO standard for certificate formats. And then PKIX is the IETF group which works on PKI. All right. Now PKI is the system. All right. So PKI is the system which is used in S-MINE, PGP, SSL, everywhere. And this is certificate authorities and all those things, right? And 509 and PKIX is the group which wrote the details of how to use all this. And it's the profile of X509. So they did not use 509. 509 is a very general standard. And since this is very general, you need to take some subset of it and use it. And that subset is called profile of 509. So TLS, IPsec, SSH, HTTPS, Smart Card, EAP, Cable Labs, everybody uses 509. Because 509 is an international standard, ISO standard. Everybody uses 509. And there are a few URLs here that you may want to just check for additional information than what is in the book. So now, these certificates are stored in your computer, and they are called root certificates. So if you go back to your computer, see, this is my browser, Firefox. It keeps all the certificates. Not everybody's certificate, not Amazon certificate. It keeps all the CA certificate. All the people who can issue certificates, right? First there was one company, then two companies, and three companies. Now there are hundreds of companies, right? And all of those authorities have to be kept so that you can verify somebody else's certificate, right? So one of the things you can do is you can go back. Internet Explorer will show you something like this. So you can go back and look at all these certificates which are stored in your computer. Okay. So you go Tools, Options in Firefox, and then I think you go into Security and then Certificates. And this is a good exercise to see whose certificate you have. VeriSign. That's the company that issues the certificate. You pay them some money and you get a certificate. And there's a list. This is a big list. You can see right here. The slider is right there. So this is a big list. So hundreds of certificates are kept in your computer. And Internet Explorer has the same thing. And whatever else you use, they have the same thing. So you can just find out where they are. And then if you go into the certificate, you can look into the certificate, you can read them. They look like this. It says the version is V3, the serial number is so much, the algorithm is SHA-1 RSA, the issuer is VeriSign, valid from, valid to, subject, public key, serial number, and on and on. All this information is there. And obviously all this information needs a MAC authentication, right? So basically it is all hashed, and then there is a SHA hash at the end. You can verify that nobody modified it and all that. So the certificates have version number. Obviously the X509 has now on version 3. Old certificates generally you won't find it, but they might be there. So version 1, 2, and 3. Serial number is unique within the CA. So the CA is the certificate authority. VeriSign, for example, has serial numbers. So basically, and then if you go to some other, they will have their own serial number. So this is for each CA. Signature algorithm. So we talked about how to sign. So this one says SHA-1 RSA. So remember the digital signature algorithm, actually no, not digital signature. So this is the RSA algorithms. There were 4 algorithms we talked about. El-Gamal, Schnorr, RSA, and DSS. So this is using RSA. With what hash? SHA-1. All right. Issuer X500 name. So every issuer has to have a name, and there is a standard for the names as well. And that standard is called X500. By the way, all the ITU standards have this letter dot number. And so this must have originated from ITU, looks like, and went to ISO. But anyway, X500 is the name of the owner. And somewhere we'll see the X500 names in a minute. Subject basically tells you what the algorithm parameters and keys are. Algorithm is public key, parameters is info, and AP is the key, whatever. Issuer unique identifier, subject unique identifier, extension field, signature, okay. Let's see, where did we use this notation? CA. We haven't used the notation yet, but when we come to that notation, CAA means the certificate for A issued by CA. All right, so CAs themselves could be certified by somebody else. For example, VeriSign could certify WashU, and then WashU could certify each of its students or professors. Okay, and so there is a whole hierarchy of CAs starting from ISO. So this CA is certified by that CA, and that CA is certified by that CA, and so on and so forth. Now they can start issuing certificates to other people. CA hierarchy. CAs form a hierarchy. Each CA has certificate for the clients forward and the parents backward. These are the parents and the clients. Each client trusts the parent certificate. So each client basically can understand the certificate issued by the parent, basically because they have the public key for them. Each enables the verification of any certificate from one CA by the user from all other CAs in the hierarchy. So these all users can understand, let's say all these users can understand the certificate issued by X, because what they can do is they can say, well, I don't know X, but I know B, B knows G, Z knows Y, and then Y knows V, and and so on and so forth. Okay, so that's what happens. Each enable verification of any certificate, so that's what it is. So basically the whole tree is there, and everybody has certificate signed by somebody else. version 3. In version 3, they added additional information in the certificate, such as email and the URLs, policy details, and the usage constraint. So usage constraint, previously, when you had a certificate, you can use it for anything you want. You can use it for mail, you can use it for purchasing, you can use it for something else. But now, you need a different certificate for each thing. For mail, there's a different certificate. You cannot use it for purchasing, but you want for purchasing, you got another certificate. If you want something else, you another certificate. So now there's usage constraint. Rather than explicitly naming a new field defines a general extension. So now you can extend the certificates by putting something else. Extensions consist of extension identifier, criticality indicator, how critical it is, and extension value. So extension ID and the value, plus how critical it is. So the extensions are authority key identifier, serial number of the CA's key. Now this is what is happening, is that CA's also get compromised. That means somebody can attack the certificate authority and get their certificate. What they have to do is they have to get a new certificate then for themselves. So the old certificate is invalid, right? And the old keys are invalid actually. So the certificates have a number even for the CA. So CA's certificate, serial number. Subject key identifier, uniquely identifies the subject key, serial number or hash. Subject key serial number. Okay, subject is the guy whose certificate it is. Key usage, allow usage, email, business, whatever. Private key usage period, time stamp and the key can be used. So basically, you get the key, when you pay for some amount, you get the key for a year or 2 years, and after that the key becomes invalid. A lot of companies forget to renew those, and you get these messages saying that the certificate has expired. Right? From some well-known companies, I've gotten those because they forgot to renew them. So that is the time stamp here. Certificate policies, policy mappings from user's domain to subject's domain, subject alternative names. So X500 names are kind of very difficult to read, and we will see them in a minute someplace. So people use alternative names. For example, I might use my name as jain@worcester.edu rather than X500 name, which will say state is equal to MO, city is equal to St. Louis, street equal to this and that. So it's a very long name. So whereas the email is very short and good. So that is alternative names can be done. Subject directory attributes. So there are other attributes that you can use then. Okay. So there are many fields here in the certificates that you can see. And actually this doesn't end. This goes to several pages, so I cannot show you all the fields. But those are all specified in 509, and people use them, right? So then the next question is, what happens if certificate is revoked? Basically, if by some means somebody's private key is compromised, which happens every day, then they need to get the new certificate, and the old certificate has to be somehow kept in a list so that people who are using it can find out, oh, this is an old certificate, this has been removed. I don't know if in your lifetime this happened, but in our lifetime, some time ago, every business person used to have a book of credit card numbers that are no longer valid. Okay, so if you give them a credit card, they will look through the book whether this credit card number is invalid, because they had the list of invalid credit cards. Now the number of invalid credit cards is so big that there is no such book anymore. It is just done automatically on the net, right? Similarly, for the certificate, the same thing is, there is a whole big list of certificates that are invalid, right? And so we need a protocol and a server. That server is called Online Revocation Server, OLRS. And that protocol is called Online Certificate Status Protocol, OCSP. So basically, anytime you get a certificate, first thing you do is you go to the OLRS and you say, well, is this certificate still valid? If it is valid, then you go ahead further. If it is no longer valid, it is in that list, you give a warning to the user. Look, this looks like a hacked stuff. All right. Anyway, we'll continue on this particular slide next time and talk more about the certificates. Lucky for you. Actually, I think you should do this anyway. Not lucky for you. I think this is a very good exercise. You should do this homework 14A. Study the root certificate in your Internet Explorer. Find the certificate for this particular company. What is the X500 name of the company? What is the X500 version and all that? So just answer these questions. And lab homework 14B. Maybe we should just give one maybe this time. Okay. Lab homework 14B, you can wait till the next time, but get 14 right now so you can at least read the certificates. Next, this lab thing is to get a certificate for yourself. Okay. So that we will do next week.